Hello to our guests as well. They're all joining us now. We'll be kicking off in a few moments. So just waiting for the rest of our guests to join us. Thank you all. Be lovely to hear where you're all from, whether you are already currently Team Tiny or where in the country you are. Would be really lovely to hear from you. If you sort of hello in the chat box would be fabulous. And then we will get started. Birmingham, cool. Bristol, Manchester, oh, excellent. Cumbria, my goodness. South Wales, Cambridge, Essex, Hampshire, Croydon. Gosh, this is fantastic. Isle of Man as well. We've got Leeds, Merseyside and Newham. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Hi, Shakura. And Emma. Just waiting a few more minutes for the rest of our guests to join us, and then we will be good to go. Thank you all for joining. Greenford in Ealing. Got quite a few from Manchester, and we are, a couple of us are travelling over to Manchester on Sunday to deliver training down there. So, yeah, we're continuing to expand. Lovely. I know we're still, oh, USA, welcome. I have no idea what time it is, and I'm assuming it's sometime in the afternoon, but you are most welcome. Thank you. We've got lots from Manchester today and Scotland. Wonderful. And Hertfordshire. Okay, I think we're just waiting for one more of our team to join. So I think we've probably gone on a bit of a search for him. But thank you all so much for joining tonight. Hi, Jamel. Hi, Rob.
Hello.
Great to see you all.
Good evening, Kim.
Good evening. Kate, I can't believe you've just literally just landed and here you are, ready and raring to go again. Fantastic.
So excited to be here. So excited to have our wonderful panelists joining us for this conversation, and so brilliant to see so many early years educators and people from all across the country joining in for this conversation this evening. Kim, how exciting.
Excellent. Yes, we've waited a while for this, so
yes,
definitely
you have.
Excited to share with everybody. I think I'm going to kind of start off because lots of people have kind of been here on time, and I know that we're expecting Josh to join us, and we were in conversation just a few minutes ago, so hopefully he will join us then. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for attending tonight. Really lovely to see you, and we're really looking forward to a great evening of sharing with you and with the lovely Kate Moxley and her guests. I've just called you Kate Moss. Kate, sorry. We have this thing with names, don't we? We kind of keep going backwards and forwards on names. So tonight you're Kate Moss. Kate Moxley. Okay. So thank you so much. Jane, can I have the next slide, please? Lovely. Just want to do a little bit of housekeeping first as we get started. Just as a reminder, the session this evening is for an hour. we will have some time for Q&A at the end. We've set aside some time to answer your questions with either Kate or with the panelists that we have here today. So thank you for that. And at the end of the session, Kate will be sharing a link to a discounted code to get the book that we're talking about this evening as well. So just as a little bit of an intro to myself and Tiney, I am Kim Esnard. I'm the training and education lead at Tiney, which is a new breed of childminder agency, if you haven't already heard of us. We are the fastest expanding childminder agency currently in the country and are doing exceptional work in the field of childcare, childminding. We have a really fabulous mission with regards to unlocking the potential of every child. We're really highly focused on the role of practitioners and really promoting childminding as a career, as really sort of raising the level of professionalism within the sector as well. So you'll hear quite a bit more about Tiney as we kind of go along throughout the evening, and we'll be sharing some great ideas with you tonight. So I'd like to just sort of hand over to Kate and invite Kate to first, we'll like to share about yourself first, Kate, to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background. I know you've got a great background in early years as well, and would really love for you to share a little bit more with the guests around you know, your background and how we've got here today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kim. Yeah, so excited to be here for this conversation this evening. And yeah, my background is early years, 25 years, I think, and counting. I've worked in a variety of different roles throughout that time, as we often do when we work in the sector, from being a childminder myself. My mum was a childminder when I was small. My own daughter went to a childminder, but I've also worked as a manager and, you know, did my MVQ training, you know, many, many years ago now. And I describe myself as an early years enthusiast. I love working with children and families and staff. And in recent years, primarily, that is my focus, working with staff to improve their mental health and well-being, and really encourage this conversation really to, I suppose, improve the health and well-being of our, because a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight was never spoken about when I did my training. In fact, it's only recently ever being spoken about. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here and I suppose share my enthusiasm and passion for not just early years, but the subject matter as well on mental health and well-being. So super excited to be able to introduce the panelists. Shall I go for that now, Kim? Yeah?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so I think there's going to be a slide appearing as I introduce the wonderful Rob Fox, very recently finalist for Nanny of the Year. We're super excited to have Rob here with us this evening. I would describe everyone that's joining us and probably everyone in the chat as an early years enthusiast. But many people might be familiar with Rob's work and his group in empowering educators to think about children and you know, his work currently is being a nanny, quite specifically. And so Rob and also Joss and Jamal were contributors, as were you, Kim, to case studies for the book. So it was really exciting to be able to invite Rob here to join this conversation and share his perspective on this conversation. So it's great to have Rob here with us this evening.
Welcome, Rob.
And also, yeah, and also welcoming Jamal Carly Campbell this evening. So Jamal is about to be publishing his own book. I think is it August or September, Jamal? And it's part of the Little Minds Matter series.
August the 18th. We just signed off on it, so I'm getting all my copies and yeah, crazy.
Yeah. That's brilliant. So I mean, you know, Jamal, you've worked in the sector for a long time. You've done all sorts of different things, haven't you, from radio to television, children's author, an early years educator. So it's great to have you with us here this evening.
Blessings for inviting me. Thank you.
And Joss, have you made it in yet? I know Joss was having some IT issues. Have you made it in? I know he wasn't able to get in. Are you here now? If he's not, he'll be here shortly, and I'm sure we'll all know when he arrives.
He is here, Kate.
He is?
Yeah, but he's not quite sure. I'm not sure if he can hear you or not at the moment.
Okay, so Joss has recently won the Nanny of the Year. Okay, so the first male to win this, first black male, but yeah, first man to ever win this award. You might be familiar with his work through Jossie Care. He's also a previous National Diversity Award winner as well. He's a travelling male nanny, and you know, he's doing some amazing work within the early years sector as well as an educator. So Josh shared you know, really interesting perspective on taking care of his own well-being in the role that he does as the case study for the book. So it's great to have Joss here, and hopefully he'll be able to speak with us very soon when he sorts out those Wi-Fi issues. So yeah, and also then last but very definitely not least, Samantha Beach from Mini Moons. So Samantha and I recently connected. Samantha is a tiny childminder, as you can see, Mini Moons, tiny home, and she is also a tiny community champion. And we've had some really interesting conversations around how she started her business as a tiny childminder. Of course, how children's wellbeing is just such an integral part of that, you know, starting at any early years provision, but also how her own wellbeing is super important in that. And we wanted to make sure that everyone that was, you know, part of this panel this evening was bringing representation in terms of the role that they do in the sector. And we often know that childminders are kind of overlooked sometimes, and actually it's really, really important that when we're thinking about well-being, we're including everybody and every role within the sector and how that's different for us all. So Samantha, so excited to have you here with us this evening. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much, Kate. It's lovely to be here.
Super exciting to have you as part of this conversation. So Kim, shall I hand back to you?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much. Really excited. And Kate, you know, we're just really pleased to have you here. And it's been so lovely working with you over the last sort of 6 months or so. We've partnered with you at Tiney, that you're writing some training for us, for our community of childminders around wellbeing and supporting them during practice. So we're really looking forward to the longer journey. So I'd like to kind of just start off really just talking about the book. Simple question, what is it about? Tell us the difference between mental health and wellbeing. Tell us, you know, a bit about the book and why you wrote it. Would love to hear of those thoughts that you had.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, so I mean, I've got the book here and a couple of things that are, I suppose, highlight and jump out to me. So often when we start to think about wellbeing for early years educators, there's often no clear definition or one understanding that everybody has. And as I've already touched upon, that's because we've never really been taught to think about our own wellbeing. And mental health has, I suppose, come to the fore. We know we're experiencing a mental health crisis within our country, and we understand that you know, the numbers, the statistics around mental health and mental health issues, not just for adults but for children as well, it's increasing, and we're seeing, you know, some of that due to COVID. But we already knew that there was a crisis or there's an issue prior to COVID. And so, you know, quite simply, the aim of the book is to improve knowledge and understanding of wellbeing in order to increase our overall health and happiness at work. And, you know, my belief is that every single person has a part to play in contributing to the harmony and culture of the provision of which they choose to work in. So the idea behind the book was that it would, you know, lay out high quality indicators of practice, allow people to personally review their own health, and then also set out principles and intentions that we can use to motivate ourselves and colleagues. I suppose to really, you know, identify skills and strengths and talents within our teams, and how we're able to celebrate all of who we are and our identity within our workplace. And so, you know, that's you know, really, I suppose, the starting point of the book and how it's so important.
Lovely. And you've got so many sort of great case studies within that as well from some of the panelists here today. Are you starting to notice a change in the sector? Are you starting to see things move and shift slightly now that people become more aware? And I think awareness is definitely a part of the growth, isn't it? Are you starting to notice those changes?
So it makes me think back to when I first started out, you know, as a trainer and consultant, and I was told not to talk about mental health. People said, oh, don't. And people whispered the word mental health at that point. And it was more like, you know, talk about emotional well-being instead. And I was like, well, no, because, you know, the whole point is that we get more comfortable speaking about it. When Ofsted introduced wellbeing within the education inspection framework back in 2019, we did then see, I suppose, people trying to tick off wellbeing to try and show what it was about. And then for me, what I tended to find was that mental health became well-being. So when people were talking about well-being, they were really referring to the word mental health. And so when I go, and now we're back face to face a lot, and I'm traveling back all around the country again, I still get the same thing. So when we talk about mental health, yes, there are people in the room who have an understanding of what it might be, but there are many people who still believe mental health means mental illness. And so it is this conversation around every single one of us has mental health, but it's going to mean different things for every single person. You know, and mental health is a state of our well-being. So it's about how we, you know, cope with those stressful things that happen. How we're able to work productively and fruitfully and make a contribution. It's also about how we feel about ourselves, you know, our self-esteem, our confidence, how we deal with those ups and downs and challenges of life. And so well-being is integrating our mental health with our physical health and how that overlaps. And there's no health without mental health. And so trying to, you know, encourage conversations around, you know, actually, when I'm healthy and well, what does that look like? And a big part of the book as well is challenging ableism. So, you know, when we're thinking about mental health and mental health issues within the sector, we know 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health issue within the next 12 months. So we've got to stop pretending that we're not working with colleagues who either are experiencing low mental well-being or haven't been diagnosed with a mental illness. And it's also this understanding that you can be diagnosed with a mental illness and still have high levels of well-being, and be happy, healthy and well and able to do your job. And so often the narrative is so negative around it that you can't. So that's why I've got so many wonderful panelists to join this conversation to, you know, bust some of those myths around this subject, Kim.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So many other questions that I kind of love to ask, but as you say, I'd love to kind of bring the panelists in now. And Joss, in the book, if I can go to you, because we've got you now, and while you're here, I kind of want to hold on to you for a little bit. There's a quote in the book where I think you said something like, you can't give the best of me to others, and sort of leaving yourself out. Can you kind of give us an idea of what poor mental health looks like, or it looks like to you, in fact? Oh, you're on mute.
On mute. Sorry. Yeah. So poor mental health sometimes doesn't look like anything, because what I've learned from experience and from myself and from just life, people look happy when they're not. So you sometimes can't tell. And it sometimes is asking the right questions. Actually, no, okay. My understanding of attunement and being in tune. When you're in tune in the spaces you're in, you're able to read the room. You can sometimes read it right or read it wrong. But when you're in tune with maybe your partner, your children in your care, you can kind of tell when they're saying they are okay, but they ain't. But it takes a real, like, that said adult has to really, 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 really know this adult or know this child to be able to tell that this child or this adult isn't being totally honest, and understand, yes, they might be lying, but they're lying sometimes to what we call hold face, sometimes to not become a burden. Because for me, for an example, for myself, I'm very weary of spaces that I deem safe.
Okay.
Especially as a man, and especially as I've had experiences, especially with women, where I'm in a space with predominantly women, where I've been made to not feel safe bearing my mental health, or
Mhm.
the understanding we have of mental health isn't the best, but we perceive men to only be one way. And we sometimes perceive emotions to be gender specific, when
Mm.
in children and I'm just gender specific, but with adults, we seem to coin them as well. So I can't ever tell you what poor mental health looks like, because celebrities that have all the money in the world, all the yoga, all the therapy,
Yeah.
they still go through X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And I realize when you've got more,
Yeah.
sometimes it is even worse and even harder for you, because
Mhm.
you're on a public stand,
Yeah.
you're in the public eye, you've got responsibilities on your own back and own shoulder,
Mhm.
and you sometimes don't want to seem like you're vulnerable. And in the line of our work, the idea that a lot of us have is that I go and say that I've got, if I'm bipolar and I've been diagnosed, and people are going to deem me not fit to work with children. So
Mm.
that's why some early age workers won't be honest with their managers and their line staff, because what person might say to us, okay, you're a danger to children now, when you're not a danger to children, but
Yeah.
because people's
Yeah.
misunderstanding of it and what it looks like, it makes it even harder for people to want to speak up. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, absolutely right. And I think that really just highlights to us the importance of awareness, first and foremost, so that we can actually understand and identify where people are and what some of the signs might look like and how we can kind of support that. I love that in the book, Kate really refers a lot to the fact that we sort of think about connectivity and community, Kate. And I'd love to kind of bring Rob and perhaps Sam in here to just ask kind of, how does that work out in your roles, in sort of your experiences? How has community and being connected to people kind of supported you in your role around mental health and well-being? Rob?
Okay, very good. A very good evening. I think, to be honest with you, it's being around positive people, bringing around your own community and choosing the people that, you know, you want to be around. For me, for example, you know, being bullied in the workplace, recognizing those people that are there to support you and guide you along the way, and mentor and friendship. Trust was an issue for me, and still is. Learning who to trust and what you can tell people, and, you know, having a hidden learning challenge also can make you mask a lot of your emotions, and you feel at unease to bring about change or even discuss your true feelings with others around you. And you, like we say, we often put the needs of the children before us, but actually you need to bring your thoughts and your emotions to the forefront, instead of masking. But masking's so easy to do, and people use it as a tool to cope as such. I hope that's answered the question.
Yeah, I think, Rob, you know, you were definitely very instrumental in supporting a lot of people to become more comfortable with talking about challenges. I know in your group, Active Childhood, you were very open about some of the challenges that you faced, but also you shared a lot of your wins and successes, and you know, you had a lot of support there, which was always absolutely fantastic, and you've really been very open with sharing. So thank you for that. And I'd love to ask Sam the same. How has kind of being in community supported you in your journey? Yeah, we'd love to hear a little bit more about sort of your journey with us, Sam, as a practitioner in Tiney, and just how you have felt that you've either been supported or that you've needed that connectivity and community support.
It was or it still is actually so valuable when you're a childminder and you're working alone. I'm very lucky that my assistant is my husband. So for us, I've got quite a good team there. But it is quite lonely, and that community at Tiney is so special. It's truly unique. I had a, shall we say, wellness wobble recently, and the support from the Tiney team was immense. And the community, I reached out to some relationships that I've built up over the year and a half I've been with Tiney, and it wasn't until I had recovered from that I reached out and I shared that experience with them, and the support and the feedback was truly loving. The values that Tiney have reflect so much here at Mini Moons as well, and going through the values of asking for help. It's not a sign of weakness, but wisdom. It was so important, and I felt so vulnerable and nervous to seek that help in the beginning, and then when the other one of rest is rocket fuel as well, I did decide to take some time away from the nursery to really reflect on my personal and professional growth as well. And it was I after a really special holiday as a family that I reflected on, I suppose, one of the big ones of you grow stronger after you fall. And to be able to go through, I'll be honest, quite a complex situation, and then having this wonderful opportunity and reading Kate's book whilst I was on that holiday, being able to come out of that situation, and I feel like I truly learned the most of having that. It felt like I'd failed, and I felt like I'd made a mistake, but I learned so much in that moment. So yes, this book had some, I was sitting on the plane. I already told Kate I felt so emotional as soon as I opened it. The letter that you wrote at the beginning of the book was inspirational, and I think it really has introduced me to some wonderful people, the panelists here today, and made those connections really strong as well moving forward.
Sam, thank you so much. I mean, there's so much there, Kate. Wouldn't you agree that some of those things, asking for help, that's massive, isn't it? Actually asking for help, and it's actually quite liberating as well. But actually taking that first step, is that one of the things that you find that's sort of a common thing within the sector, that people struggle to ask for help?
Well, yeah, often they struggle to ask for that help because often we don't realise we need it at the time. Sometimes we can't see the picture when we're in the frame. So we don't realise just how low we might have felt, or how, much confidence might have been affected, or how much, of a struggle things are, until we suddenly feel well again. And then we realise, I haven't sung in the shower in a while, I haven't made plans with my friends, and then we realise, hold on, if I've got this like renewed sense of energy and fitness now, I must not have been myself. And so it links back to what Joss was saying as well, is that actually, sometimes we're not aware ourselves because we haven't been taught about this stuff. So that's why it's really crucial in our spaces that we can have each other's back. So if we can't see it ourselves, or we're not ready to see it, that we've got someone, to guide us and help us. And I think that links to, like what Sam is saying there, which is what I see, is that often it's educators who have had adversity or challenges in their life, who have a diagnosis of a mental health condition or a neurodivergent difference or a disability, who have experienced these challenges, and then they have developed a greater emotional intelligence or emotional literacy, which means they have more of a capacity to take care of themselves and look out for others. And so that's what we want to empower with everybody, this conversation of how we can have these conversations within the workplace, so people can stay in work and thrive. and just linking back to what Rob was saying, you know, a lot about the book is around, you know, we've all at some point in our life tried to fit in somewhere where we didn't belong, and there's a very real difference in fitting in and truly authentically belonging. And when we find a space or a community, that sees us for all of who we are and values that, then, you know, then we have that resounding feeling of knowing that we belong in that space. And to do that, we have to see all of who people are, and that this growing understanding of an intersectional approach to our mental health and well-being. And that means we have to understand the lived experience of our colleagues with regard to race, ethnicity, religion, culture, gender, identity, sexuality, neurodivergent, disability. Because I was thinking the other day, this retention and recruitment crisis we're experiencing in the sector, how many educators would still be working in this profession if they hadn't had to leave because of you know, mental health issues or lack of support, etc. So we've got a long way to go, but it's great to hear. It's great to hear this from everyone.
We've always been sort of glamorizing that burnout thing, haven't we, for a long time, and that whole mindset has to really change, doesn't it? I mean, we were in a crisis, and early years people are very good at showing up for those things, but we need to learn to navigate this an awful lot better, kind of now and in the future.
We're not invincible. We're not immune.
Exactly.
You know, and nothing stays the same forever. We'll all experience tricky times across our life, and I suppose that leads us into what we're going to speak to Jamel about, really, Kim, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Just you know, what can we do in the sector, Jamel, would you say, to support well-being when it comes to representation and inclusion? Save the tough questions for the big man, eh?
Blessings. No, I mean, it's hard, because I don't even think the answer is, I don't think the answer is one of those quick ones. It's not a quick thing. It's not a quick fix. No. It's a process. It's a process. Like, we've had years and years and years of a sector that has been structured based on the old fundamentals, which are drenched in racism, built on the backs of a racist institute. And that's the reality. You know, some people would agree, some people won't. But, you know, it's just crazy. It's crazy. And we see it. Simple things like the hierarchy. You know, when the higher you get up the chain in a lot of these organizations, the less black faces you see. And even on panels, you know, we're still having panels that don't represent the wider community. Many of them are whitewashed. And often when we have these conversations, you know, about why are there not any black people on the panels, we're often told that, you know, we're not aware of any black specialists or black professionals or black educators, hence why we created the EY Blacklist, which is a directory of black or Afro-Caribbean professionals in ed and EY. So people can actually go to that list and find someone that, you know, can speak upon different matters and different things, you know. And also being a man, you know, I don't just have one struggle, do you know what I mean? I'm a black man in the early years, and you know, there's only around about 0.3 or 0.5% of the workforce is black men, do you know what I mean? And obviously if
that brings its particular challenges in itself, doesn't it?
Exactly. And I've been in, you know, the EY for 20 years plus, you know, and I've seen some things that are still the same, and I've seen some changes, but they're small changes, you know, and we've still got a long way to go. But to answer it, I think, as I said in the book, you know, it's all about authentic, or creating authentic experiences, authentic interactions, doing things because you want to, not because you're being told to, not because it's all part of the process, a tick box process of, okay, do we have black dolls? Do we have black books? Do we have black educators? Is there a black manager at this setting? You know, we need to do it because we want to have a workforce that those children, those families that attend the setting can connect to. And also, if there are no, if you come from a demographic that is mainly Caucasian, you know, you're creating those experiences, because those people that live in those rural areas, they may move into the city and have to interact with people outside of their ethnicity. So it's about, you know, making it as authentic as possible and building those bridges, you know, calling in practitioners, calling in professionals, you know, on Black History Day, not only talking about Harriet Tubman and Martin Luther King, but talking about some people that are relevant to, you know what I mean, to Black people today.
Yeah, current sort
you
of.
know what I mean, current affairs, current people. So it's just, you know, it's just about making those links and being authentic, and not only just celebrating Black History Month on 1 month. It shouldn't be a month. It should be all 360 whatever days, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think I was just going to add there something, Jamel, you talk about in the book is, you know, giving people their flowers, and it's a lot around celebrating the work that we're doing as educators. And sometimes that's something we struggle with. I think I definitely find like self-esteem or self-confidence around the role. And like, you know, it's just so important that we're celebrating, or we're able to celebrate. And that links into, I suppose, what I'm talking about, a community of care, establishing these mentally healthy spaces where we're a community that cares about each other. And, you know, we can't thrive as a community if we don't all thrive. And how we're empowering each other. And it comes back to giving those flowers, doesn't it? And celebrating what we're doing.
Most definitely. EY love, hashtag EY love. I've been tweeting it for the last couple of weeks, because you know what I mean, we always talk about all the negativity, and right now, you know, the EY sector is in a shambles. I'm hearing about higher ups being made redundant. People are leaving at EY to in Tesco's. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of things, and it's like, wow, we're already a sector that's been knocked on the head, you know what I mean, 100 times. If it's ratios, if it's funding, if it's this, that, the third. So it's just about bigging up the work that we do, because there's some amazing practice. There's some amazing milestones being met. Do you know what I mean? And it's just one of those things. It's so powerful, but are we sharing it? We know all the things that are going wrong, but are we sharing the good? And I feel like when we focus on the negative, positive is blindsided, and that affects our mental health as a whole. You know, we're one big community, and it's about sharing that love. So if Kate's got a book out, I'm going to promote it. If Josh has won his award, I'm going to promote it. Do you know what I mean? And that's just me. And also not feeling pressured to promoting organically, you know, promoting because, you know what, this is something that resonates with me, you know. And this, blessings, and just sending out blessings. That's it. Sending out blessings and the sharing that good energy, because I feel like it's so important. Hence why I write Good Rising class all the time, because sometimes when we're rising as teachers, you know, the job can be daunting. You know, we are dealing with a lot. So yeah, man, blessings.
Yeah, I love that. And it's about, you know, Josh talks about this as well, doesn't he? Sort of filling your cup all the time. And we need to fill those cups every day in order to go back out and serve and honor and, you know, help children to do the same. And I'm really hoping that we are, as we are learning about our own mental health and well-being, that we're also supporting children to be able to identify and have strategies to support their own, and to recognize, and to actually ensuring that they know that they have that voice as well, that actually they don't want to do something a certain way, or that they're not feeling a certain, and that it's actually okay. So it's about making those spaces. I'd really,
may I add as well? Children pick up on so much. They're so sensitive. A child can tell when you're having a bad day. I've had like a crazy couple months, and I've had children just come up to me randomly, grab my leg and ask me if I'm okay. And I love that. Children are so in tune. So we need to turn up. We need to recognize and realize that, you know what, these little faces are dependent on us to how do you say it, to show up. We need to show up.
Absolutely, Jamal. I would add, and again talk about in the book the work of Carol Garberdon Murray, where she talks about care is a core value of education, and as educators we need to model that care, and that care has to start with us. So long gone are the days where we can show up to work and leave our problems at the door. It's impossible to do that, and actually if we're at home childminder or whatever our role, then we don't leave the setting, do we? We are the setting. So actually it's okay to have had a tricky day, and it's how we can then, you know, either restart the day, how those tools that we're trying to empower our children with, are we giving ourselves the same amount of compassion? Yeah, exactly. You know, what do I need? Yeah,
it brings in those vibrations. I play music in class, and all those things that make me happy I share with them and say, look, these are tools that you can use, you know, and it helps. It builds that whole culture of you know, self-love
and goodness, the good vibes. I think I'd really love to, before we kind of go over to the community, because I know there's quite a few questions in the chat that people would like to ask towards the panel. I'd love Kate to pick out a little bit more from the book around any sort of practical steps that our audience can take to look after their well-being, you know, some sort of like starting points, as well as particular sort of specifics that we could all do to enhance our well-being and
I mean, so in the second part of the book we talk about a philosophy for well-being. So I suppose it's our personal understanding of our own well-being and what contributes to that. So when I'm feeling happy and healthy and well, what does that look like for me? How do I feel? What do I do to take kind of care of myself? And then it's also around this professional understanding. What boundaries have I got in place? You know, what supports me? And, you know, I think about, you know, when we apply for a job in the first place, or we are developing our own early years provision in our home, or if that's in a play group or whatever early years provision that is, what is important to me as an educator? So what has shaped the early years educator that I am today, thinking about my identity or those lived experiences, and why is this space, or the space that I'm going to create, what is important to me? Because when we talk about, you know, well-being, thinking, you know, that meaning of inclusion and belonging, that's the central point there, is that, you know, to feel happy and healthy somewhere, then we've got to feel as though we really, you know, authentically belong. And oftentimes we don't have a clear defined purpose or pedagogy, and sometimes that is then a challenge. So I talk about in the back of the book risk factors for our well-being and protective factors for our well-being. So something I've been saying recently is that, you know, if I was interviewing for a job at the moment, I'd be thinking about, or if I was, you know, at home with my own provision, I'd be thinking about knowing that the sector's really stressful at the moment, and knowing all of the things that we're facing. What have, you know, you got in place to take care of your own well-being? What's something outside of work that is a priority for you? And I'd be asking that to people in terms of, you know, if I was interviewing for a job, but then I'd also be, as an individual, thinking about my own provision and what have I got in place for my well-being, and how am I promoting that so it's abundantly clear to everyone within that space. Because for me, it's about this community of care. Something I've spoken about in the book is the work of the Blackfoot Nation, translated from Six Seeker Nation, where they talk about the breath of life theory. And the idea behind the breath of life theory is that it's an understanding and a philosophy which I think really sums up our work in the early years sector, which is, you know, an understanding that, you know, once we're gone, our teachings will live on. And so the point around that is that, you know, our community actualization, so whether we're healthy and thriving in our spaces, that is dependent on our whole community. So our self-actualization, reaching the best we can be, that's a starting point that we go into our settings. So that real importance of taking care of our own well-being and understanding what those risk factors might be. But as Jamel said, focusing on those positives, like, you know, why have I chosen to work here? What's important to me? because then it's about how we as a community thrive, and how that community actualization is just so critical. And you know, well-being doesn't happen by chance. How happy, healthy we are in our spaces, it doesn't happen by accident. There's lots of intentionality around that. So yeah, I think it's understanding what protective factors we have in place for our well-being and how they relate to our practice.
Lovely, thank you. I think one of it sort of leads into one of my favourite areas that the book sort of talks about is those mentally healthy workplaces. I just love that title. It springs so much to me. It says so much. What is a mentally healthy workplace? I mean, that just sounds like life, doesn't it? And what does that look like? And, you know, how does that feel? And how do we feel when we're a part of something that's so good and that's so strong, that's very human in its approach? You know, and we've moved quite away from that for a long time. And I think during the pandemic, we kind of caught a sort of sight of it again for a bit. Yes, Joss, please come in.
Yeah, so I've been reading Bell Hooks All About Love, and it coincides with my whole theory in early years, where I've realized there's a lack of love from when I started when I was 19 till now. We're scared to, because we can no longer give cuddles due to safeguarding. I understand that, but we're very, we struggle a lot to give love to the children in our settings in a way where love these children the same way you would your own siblings. I've got a little sentence from the book to read. We cannot be whole human beings indeed. We may find it hard to be human without the sustenance of this first attachment. And if we go back to attachment styles, the way we receive love, the way we give love, the way we want to be loved, and then refer that to how we want to love and adore our children. And that all coincides with our well-being. Because one thing I've realized with our well-being, we can still give love. Hence, then that's what we call survival mode. And I think that also backs up what you're saying and backs up the answer of what does it look like? It looks like love, poor well-being.
It does.
Because sometimes all you have left is to, let me not cry right now, but sometimes all you have left is to give, is the love you have in your cup. And it always gets poured back in some way or the other, but sometimes that's all you really have to give sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's what poor well-being can look like, in a fact where it's not poor, it's you referring back to your most childlike state and just giving without wanting to receive back and not realizing that you're giving something that you need for yourself.
I love that.
So,
love that.
Get that book, please, people. Bell Hooks All About Love, please.
After you've read Kate. Yeah, absolutely. And that's about that community, that connectivity. It's all of those things that are right there, isn't it? And we know the impact of love on the brain 100%, don't we? And it changes us, and we talk about it with children, and actually we forget that we have become so disconnected with ourselves that going back to some of those simple things and meeting those needs really do have an impact, don't they? I really want to make a bit of time for some of the panelists' questions as well. So thank you so much, team. I hope you are ready for some questions. I'm just going to go to the Q&A chat first and then go to the chat. So first question we've got from Shamela that says, what's the difference between a person going through stress and anxiety versus someone who becomes bitter towards others but still mask it? How can we differentiate? Joss, want that one?
The behaviour and the bitterness can stem from the poor well-being and the lack of managing your mental health. Where I've learned no hurt is intentional, but it's hard to say that when you're the one getting hurt. Where if we look at children don't ever hurt someone intentionally. They hurt someone due to the lack of having the tools or forgetting the tools and sometimes being in survival mode. So it's, as adults, how we can deal with that is taking us out of the situation and protecting our own selves. Because sometimes that's when you really got to put yourself first, saying, this situation is damaging to me, I need to exit. I put myself first. I love them, but I love me more.
Right, so absolutely. And, you know, Kate and I always talk about that shared responsibility. that there is, you know, with regards to our well-being and the spaces that we're in, but also ownership of our and being committed to our own well-being as well, and making sure that we are not in those toxic relationships and we're able to manage or take ourselves out. So it's about that balance, I think, as well. Kate, are you going to?
Yeah, I think I'd just like to add there, you know, often it's this person isn't giving me a hard time, this person is having a hard time. And just like children, you know, sometimes when we need the most amount of love, care, support or attention, we ask for it in the most unloving of ways. And so, you know, a big part of the book, we talk about stress and what is our stress signature. You know, we all experience stress in, you know, various different elements within our life. Okay, and you know, stress is normal, but getting stuck in the stress cycle is the thing that is damaging for us. And so how are we in our workspaces, or how do we as individuals understand our stress signature? Who's got our back when we need it? And actually, if we don't do anything about stress, then it impacts not just our mental health, but our physical health as well. And I think it's a real risk factor for our sector. And so, yeah, going back to your point, Kim, it's hard to answer this here about someone who comes towards others, because that is nothing necessarily to do with mental health issues or stress. It is actually, as you said, that reciprocal relationship in a space. So every person in that provision, whether it's, you know, a childminder and their families, or whether it's a large earlier setting managers and educators, it's you know, we all have a part to play in the harmony and health of our setting, and the professionalism we have towards each other and how we take care of our health. So yeah.
Thank you. I want to turn to Rob, because I know that you are so experienced, Rob, with working with the little people, and and quite a wide range of experience as well, particularly with children with additional needs as well. One of our questions is, how can we identify mental health in a child?
This is interesting. The withdrawn child, the child who doesn't say anything, but often the child that overtalks. The child who is a little bit extra outgoing. Knowing the signs, just knowing your children, but also with children with additional needs as well. And especially, a lot of children obviously are undiagnosed as well. And knowing your children, knowing how and the ways they learn, the way they are, and recognizing any changes or patterns in behavior that may be of difference.
Thank you. And I think that's right. I think, you know, we're in that unique position of being able to work so closely with families and children, and understanding that, you know, families may be going through some changes, children may experience, and there may be sort of family struggles, as everybody's kind of going through many changes at the moment. And I think, again, for me, it kind of goes back to us being able to, one, be trained and understand what it looks like, how we can support, just really raising that awareness all of the time for ourselves, for the children, and really getting to not treat it as an add-on, but literally as the way we live now, that we should be teaching children very early how to support their own well-being and mental health. It just should be, you know, part of the curriculum. The same way that I believe that children should be taught how to be an entrepreneur at school. But, you know, there are lots of ways that we can kind of update now and change things, because it's a way of moving forward. But I think that's a big question, and there's a lot there. We know that it's around behaviours and those sorts of things, but it is worthy of more investigation and increasing that awareness around what does it look like. And I know there's lots of training out there for ACEs, you know, children that have adverse childhood experiences and experience trauma, and the impact that will have on them. I haven't got a link for you at the moment, but maybe by the end I might be able to find a link for you to share on that. Rob,
Kim, can I just touch on that point? It's about being in tune and attuned to our children and their needs, and also the needs of our staff members also, and the adverse difficulties or challenges that they may face as well. So I guess community as a hub, knowing our people, knowing our tribe around us within the workplace, really brings about that supportive nature, and actually just being in tune to that as well. You know, knowing and being of worth.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. I want to get through a couple more questions. So we've got, do you agree that being bullied and had been target of racism in childhood still brings anxiety and stress, which feeds into one's mental health in adulthood? Anybody want to volunteer an answer?
100%. I'll jump in there.
Thank you.
I'll jump in there. Yeah, it does. It does affect children in the way that they see themselves. I remember, you know, like my experience in school, there was always this thing that a lot of my classmates used to do, where they used to face off the African people versus the Caribbean people, and they would laugh and they would call names and say you got rubber lips and you know, talk about the aesthetics of the young girls, and that has affected a lot of these people. These children have now become adults, and it has affected their self-confidence, it has affected the way that they see themselves. And yes, it may seem as banter and child play, but it is racist. It is racist. And it's about celebrating. I always talk about celebrating each other, you know, the differences. Books like My Skin, Your Skin are so important. That's My Skin, Your Skin by Laura Henry Allen.
Yeah.
And like, we need to celebrate each other. We need to talk about those differences. And we need to talk about why it's important not to make fun of those differences, you know, because we all come in different shapes and sizes, and we're all important. Those differences are all important and special.
Yeah.
And that could even be with learning difficulties too, you know, children making fun of each other for one child knowing how to write their name and another child not knowing how to write their name. But children need to understand from the jump that we all have our strengths and we all have things that we find challenging, and eventually, you know, we can get to a space, you know, that we'll be happy with, you know, because it's all about us really and truly. You know, educators can teach, we can bring things to the forefront, but it's about the individual and how they feel about themselves and their milestones.
Yeah.
So,
wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just wanted to quickly add to what Jamal was saying there really briefly, is that actually part of another section that Jamal contributed to in the book, it is talking about trauma-informed practice and how we're supporting colleagues who have experienced traumatic experiences. And we, as you mentioned, we're seeing this rise in adverse childhood experiences and our understanding of it, and trauma-informed practice. But it also reflects on how do our systems and structures support staff when it comes to trauma-informed practice, and how does our setting support and understand, I suppose, that for their perspective. So like when we shout self-care at people, actually when they need community care, and our systems and structures need to be much more supportive, it's an awareness of those things. So just echoing what Jamal said there.
Lovely, thank you. I think I'm mindful of time, and we've got a couple of minutes left, and I'd love to kind of put some closing thoughts in before we wrap up. I think with some of the questions that we've got in the chat here, I'd love to still keep the questions. Those of you that have registered through Eventbrite, we will do a Q&A answer to some of the questions, and we'll send it out in our thank you to you, just so that you do get a response to your questions, and we'll go through the chat just so that we can address that. It's a lot to cover in an hour, and we wanted to give a bit of opportunity to that. So just Kate, a bit of a sort of close from you. I've got a couple of other things that I'd love to sort of share at the end. We also have a treat for you, a link to the book as well, with some discounts as well. So your kind of key thoughts today, I guess, that you'd like people to kind of go away with.
Yeah, I think it's great, Kim, that we'll follow up with the Q&As, because I think that, you know, we would love to have all the time in the world to discuss this subject, especially with our panel, because they've got such a breadth of knowledge and experience that it's just so great to be able to, you know, have this conversation. I suppose, you know, what we're talking about is that our well-being is interconnected to our environment, to the people that we spend time with, the spaces that we occupy. And so it's the intentionality around that, where we're choosing to put ourselves, and the conversations and the things we have in place to think about educator well-being. It has to start with us thinking about ourselves before we can then authentically develop you know, early years environments that, you know, enable children to flourish, you know, and so it's so important that we are considering. And I suppose my book ends, and this session is going to end with me. It's like a call to action. Yeah, you know, we need to act now. Enough is enough. We need to be able to lead with intention when it comes to our health and well-being. And if we act like what we do makes a difference, then it will. Yeah, so even one little action, one little word, something, it never goes wasted. So, you know, we can be the change, and, you know, we can lead that change, and that will make a difference for the generations of children that are going to be in our care. So yeah, we're about to drop a 30% off code. That's the biggest that's the biggest discount we've offered for the book, so don't tell anyone, but exclusive to this webinar this evening and Tiney. I think you'll find that in the chat now. So it's 30% off on the Routledge website. You can get that book for 30% off, which is obviously you know, a great discount. And yeah, hopefully you can link up with all of us on social media and continue the conversation and continue this new agenda for mental health and well-being.
Thank you, Kate. And we've also got a few places to go and get support from. If you want to have someone to speak to and kind of develop a bit more and find out some more information. I know Kate and all of our guests here today are really willing to engage and have conversation with you, with your settings, with you individually. And so please do take a note of those. I would love to share just a few thoughts on, could I have the next slide, please, Jane, on coming up? Please. Yeah, lovely. Just a few things that I've got coming up in the next sort of few weeks and months. August, we'll be launching our guide to sustainability. So back in last year at some point, we launched our guide to becoming an inclusive anti-racist practitioner. And we are currently working on a parent version of that as well. But first off, we've got our guide to sustainability and how our settings, whether you're a childminder or a setting, can become more sustainable, and really introducing that to children and within our practice, and really growing and developing those global citizens, little people. So we've got that coming up in August with a lovely guest panelists as well. September, we'll be launching our Tiny Big Conversation. I know that we already have Ofsted Big Conversation, and I like to be in on those things. So we're going to have Tiny Big Conversation, and we're going to talk about big things. Okay, yes, we're going to talk about big things. So one, I want to have conversations with people around some of the exciting changes happening in childcare, particularly in childminding. And also we will be having a really big panel of men and male practitioners, where we will talk about men in childcare. So we've got quite a different agenda there, and it will be something that we're doing regularly. So we would really love for your feedback and engagement there. And then in October, we'll be launching the Parents' Guide to Raising Anti-Racist Children. So again, they're going to be very similar to what we've done today, where we're having conversation with the real people in the sector that are doing the work, that are sharing, and that it's real, and that you're able to connect with them. And I hope that you've really kind of been able to have the opportunity today to sort of reach closer to these wonderful role models that we have. Kate, I want to say thank you for all the work that you do in the sector. I thank you for bringing this so much to the table. I thank you that you have such an incredible voice. You're an incredibly brave woman, that you speak up, and you make it count. So we really do appreciate that, and we really wish you every success with the book. We are really looking forward to continuing working with you, with our childminders. And I would really love to encourage people that if you haven't already, please go and look at tiney.co, follow us on socials to get some updates. We'd really love to share more with you around the journey that Tiney is on. Our mission, our vision is to unlock the potential of every child. Our mission is to raise the professional sort of standard of childminders in particular. So please do join us and come on that journey. We'd love to continue further conversations with you. All right, so thank you all for joining, and good evening. And I think we're almost, well, we're 5 minutes over, but thank you so much for staying. It was really lovely to have you with us, and we're looking forward to connecting with you again soon. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Blessings all.
Thank you. Jamel, I do enjoy getting that message every morning on Twitter.
Blessings.
It's wonderful. You just think to yourself, actually, it is a lovely message, and yeah, it's really